Hello, everyone, and we are back here at YCS Hartford, Connecticut. We're in beautiful downtown Connecticut. We're at the convention center. Here's a scenic view of the city. It's nice out here. It's nice out here. Very green. I'm not used to it. It's been fantastic so far. We have experienced 10 rounds of Swiss. We are now entering our final round, round 11 of 1,247 duelists. Only one remains undefeated. And in fact, for this round, we're going to be looking at table 1. And why are we going to be looking at table 1, Asala?
Oh, because that one undefeated player is playing a crazy strategy that I absolutely did not expect to be doing this well. He is on ABC-Therion. So I'm very excited to see how this match will play out.
Yeah, me too. I mean, when we talked about this deck initially, I expected it to be a lot more Therion, right? Like, that is the new theme. That is the one that I just expect to sort of, like, blow out into the scene. But this is very much an ABC deck with some, like, support from the Therion cards. So I'm super excited to see exactly how it plays out. And his opponent, Luke Parks, so the decorated duelist, right, playing arguably the best deck in the room, Despia brand. But we're not going to keep it anymore. We're going to head down to the table for our final round of Swiss. This is round 11 of YCS Hartford. And first up here is Matthew Van Heuvel from Brampton, Ontario. Favorite card, the ball chain. So combo player, combo duelist. And then next up, Luke Parks. He's from Sheffield, England. Favorite card, Black Rose Dragon. Fan favorite, definitely a classic at this point.
Yeah, iconic for sure. 5e is one of my favorite eras of Yu-Gi-Oh! Definitely got me started into the game.
Incredible to think that that era is over 10 years ago.
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have been aged very much by this.
Yeah, similar to me though, right? Like, I played Yu-Gi-Oh! When I was really young, but I didn't really jump into the competitive scene until, like, basically the very end of GX, like the beginning of 5Ds. So it was a good time, right? It was really, like, when things started picking up pace in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right? At the end of GX, we saw things like Dark Art Return, like those powerful decks happen, and then as well as like Gladiator and Beasts, right? But as soon as we hit that Synchro era, things like Emergency Teleport, Destiny Hero Malicious became so much stronger, right? Things started really picking up, and Black Rose Dragon just iconic for that format.
Yeah, honestly, just the ability to synchro summon gave you these combos that didn't really exist before, and you get these new combinations of cards where, like, just cards that would naturally just throw monsters on the field all of a sudden did something. Like Destiny Hero Malicious obviously was good for tribute summoning before, now did way more when it just turns into Stardust Dragon. And I think that's actually really similar to these new age decks that we have right now. A lot of good engines are really supported by the link mechanic, and then ABC-Therion kind of follows similar suit, where not necessarily cards that would line up together, but they follow similar rules, and then they just have that synergy in being machines, and then being able to focus on the equip strategy here.
Yeah, the ABCs and the mechanics they use, like Union monsters, right? Something that has always existed for a very long time, but never really saw, like, an incredibly, like, large amount of play. Like, we saw it in Montina, for example, or, I mean, even, like, Trigon was a Union monster, even though not really used like that. But ABC is that one, like, breakout Union strategy that we've had that's really, like, pushed it to the max, and I'm excited to see it at table 1 at the end of today.
Yeah, honestly, I would not expect ABC to have made it back into the top tables after all this time. You know, it's really saw its dominating format back in 2016, and that was, what, 6 years ago? To see it still be a competitively viable deck at this point, you got to really show the power of these Therion cards, right? Really just pushing it to the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, the power of Therion cards for sure is what, like, that's what's primarily changed for the strategy, right? Is really those, as well as just Union Hanger. We've talked about it a lot. It's the field spell for the strategy. It does everything you can want and more. Like we were talking about it earlier, there's, like, modern field spells are very good at replacing themselves, right? Like, oh, I play this card, I get to search for an end-theme card most of the time, or similar effect that, like, keeps me even on economy, and then I get all this upside. Union Hanger was one of the first, right? Maybe not the exact first, but one of those first cards that really made a big impact where it was like, wow, like, if I, not only if I just let this resolve, do you just trade for free, but then if it stays up, I'm just going to lose the game to, like, you being able to grind me out because of the field spell.
Absolutely. And that's one of those things that even among all the field spells right now that are still nearly as powerful, ABC had Union Hanger that if you don't remove it, that additional pressure from equipping a card every single turn is actually so problematic that it still holds true today. But it looks like the players are ready to get started in Game 1 of this final round of Swiss.
Yeah, but it looks like Matthew is going to go ahead and start with Water Enchantress of the Temple. So he has included the Adventure Engine in his deck as well. So he's going to go ahead and use it to grab Red's Farmers here. Going to activate to special summon his token, also get the Faithful Adventure from his deck placed face up onto the field into his spell or trap card zone. So this deck, even though you could argue it's like normal summon reliant, right? Like you need to normal summon an ABC with the Union Hanger out to make sure you get the equip and get going, but you're not using their effects, right? You're not using normal summon monster effects in that way, so you get this incredibly powerful adventure engine included without much cost. And oh, he opens with the Union Hanger.
Effective Union Hanger, effective Faithful Adventure.
And he's gonna get B Buster Drake, gonna normal summon it, which is gonna then allow him to equip another one of his Union monsters to it, as well as trigger the Faithful Adventure to grab Draco back. He's going to equip Union Rider, probably like one of the more modern Union cards that was released. I believe it was in Eternity Code?
Eternity Code,
yeah. It's a crazy set. One of the, like, even as strong as, like, Union Driver was, it wasn't an all-star then, but this is really the deck you want it for. So he goes in and uses the Faithful Adventure to search Wandering Griffin Rider, discards the Draco back, so it re-equips on the token. Then he's going to use the Union Driver. This is going to let him equip a different Union monster onto the B Buster Drake.
Yeah, and this gets around Union Hanger's restriction, where the monster equipped cannot be special summoned this turn, and because Union Driver just simply replaces itself with another of the pieces from ABC, that monster, because it's a Union monster, has the effect that it can special summon itself once per turn. So just gets to put it right on the field, link directly into Platinum Gadget, trigger both of their effects in the graveyard. B is going to be able to add another piece from the deck to the hand. A is going to be able to add back a piece from the graveyard other than itself.
Yeah, it's huge. Basically, the Sea Crush Wyvern is going to go to his hand, and then, as you mentioned, like we were talking about things that just throw monsters in the field, the fact that he gets to link them away immediately for Platinum Gadget and trigger their effects are crazy. But here's where the really cool stuff happens, right? He was able to get access to the Therion part of the engine.
This is... It's such an insane opening. You have all the three power spells. You have Rite of Aramis here, you have Union Hanger, and you have the Therion Disco Coliseum. Like, that has to be the ideal opening, so I'm really glad we get to see what is most likely the full force of this ABC-Therion strategy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we were talking about it before, in terms of, like, what the Therion King Regulus does. Like the big thing about it is that people look at it like, oh, it's a negate, right? It's one of the most stronger Therion monsters. Here, a lot of times you're just special summoning it to equip back a machine, because all it checks for is a Therion or its same type. In this case, it's a machine. And yeah,
this one's more than once anyway.
Luke sort of caught on right there, right? They're not once per turn, these effects, which is what really makes the ABC so powerful, and the fact that the Therion gives him, or the King Regulus gives him another way to do it, as well as Union Driver allows him to cheat it, lets you open with these crazy fields off of not very many cards. Well, this is 3 power spells, right? But this is a big, big opening, even in the modern format.
But you know what the Despia strategy could have in this situation that would be quite the blowout if it's uncontested.
Super Polymerization?
Super Polymerization with that IP Masquerena as well as the Union, the ABC Buster Dragon.
I'll tell you that Super Polymerization, not a card that's typically contested.
Yes.
In fact, uncontestable.
Which is why it might be so broken right now.
Yeah. Super broken, in fact.
But it looks like it's just a mere Aliber. Oh, Regulus immediately being used, not giving him the chance to try to find that copy.
No.
We do see copies of Forbidden Droplet in Luke's hand, and that's another interesting part about Regulus effect. Because it often sends itself as cost, it's not going to be able to be hit with Forbidden Droplet. It gets to dodge that effect, so you have to use it preemptively.
And Luke's seen enough, though.
Yeah, I was just like, he probably knows what I'm playing anyway, so I'm like, yeah.
Luke considering if he wanted to try to hide the deck he was playing, hide the strategy, seeing that his opponent had the full field and he wasn't likely going to be able to break it anyway. But likely when you're at this stage, the last round of Swiss, they've been sitting next to each other, assumingly by this point. They likely know what each other's been playing this entire time.
Yeah, I mean, hard to hide your deck, as well as it's hard for Matt to hide the smile behind his mask that he just mopped the floor right there with that strong opening. And it really just showed, like, how powerful this deck's, like, ceiling is, right? He had the 3 most powerful cards he could got access to, the Therion card with its field spell, had Union Hanger, as well as Wandering Chances for Red Armis here, right? Like, there's all 3 engines sort of coming together and just doing as much as he could. And even if part of that board is broken, like, Super Polymerization would have been big, but it's not like he's out, right? Like, he still has things like the fact that ABC Dragon Buster in combination with Union Hanger, like, gets back all your monsters, you re-trigger all these effects. The deck has staying power, right? It's a lot like, I don't like modern deck, like Phantom X, for example, right? Like, have all the same power where even after I do things, I still have all these graveyard effects, right? Similar, like, ABC Dragon Buster is a difficult card to deal with, right? Like, back in the day, it was like, oh, you have to have a Kaiju. Because if you let them, like, tribute off to re-get the guys, then all of a sudden, you're triggering Union Hanger again, you're getting all their effects when they're sent back to the graveyard.
Yeah, honestly, it was one of those situations, even back then, where you often didn't even care as much about its removal effect by discarding a card. You would rather just make sure that you were able to summon those 3 pieces back. Sometimes you just shotgun the effect and just get the 3 pieces back immediately because of how much force that would apply for your following turn. And those are the kind of combo decks that really shine, maybe like comparable to something like Drytron, where your turn 2, even if they are able to break your field, if it's not all that impressive, or it's just like, it's breakable, quote unquote, you still have so many pieces, they have to actually end the game on that turn, otherwise you will just come back.
You know what ABC Dragon Buster is the most like, actually? Breakers. It is like a break-its monster. Like, that is actually it. It's an X-Pack monster that'll tag out to get you back in things. It's one of those things where once they got going, it was hard for you to deal with it, right? Same thing here. It's really hard, especially because you're allowed to sort of, like, cheat around these things that made their Union mechanic fair. With things like Union Driver, just additional monsters like King Regulus being able to get you more stuff. It does a lot.
Yeah, I think this deck is actually extremely comparable with Break-Its, especially how it takes advantage of the Adventure Engine. You do have a normal summon, it's a very normal summon in life, but you never use the effect on field, and that just really plays into the value of the Adventure Engine, where you're able to get that additional one in Griffin Rider to protect your plays and make sure the most powerful effects that you have get to resolve. And if they are still uncontested in that route, then you have that additional interruption on your opponent's turn as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very, very cool deck. I'm excited to see that these players are reminiscing about other, like, previously broken down certain decks in certain formats, but yeah, so let's think about, like, cards that are typically side decked in this format, right? What do you think are the best ones that line up against this Adventure or ABC-Therion deck?
I really like the idea of Dark Ruler No More. I think Dark Ruler No More gets to slap down and then it really just checks everything, especially if you're not shotgunning something along the lines of ABC Buster Dragon. Also, in that end field we saw, almost every zone was filled. You weren't able to shotgun it. You don't have the room. You have to try to use the Wandering Griffin, you have to try to use the regulars, just clear the space so that you can eventually use the Buster Dragon to get those 3 spots back, and so you can summon back A, B, and C. But we'll see in Game 2 if Luke has those kind of materials, but he doesn't really need them immediately because he does get to choose to start.
That is true, and he's going to open things up with Fright for Patchwork, grabbing him both a Polymerization alongside Edge of Chain. We've seen this time and time again. Incredibly powerful start, right? There's one thing that the Despia Brandon has. It has access to these cards that just give you so much. Like, Brandon Fusion, just so many pluses. Same thing with Fright for Patchwork to get your, like, gas tank just as full as possible. I think another card when we talk about side decks, though, commonly side, like, Cosmic Cyclone's huge against this deck, right? Cosmic Cyclone's huge against Union Hanger. It also banishes the Union monsters, which is big. The one thing that I would like to ask you is, how do you feel about Dimensional Barrier? Like, typically you think about, like, oh, stopping Fusion, stopping the ABC Dragon Buster. Seems strong, but is it actually enough?
Yeah, so Dimensional Barrier, as we mentioned, being so popular against strategies such as Sword Soul and the Despia decks, because they kind of lock you into their mechanic, right? Even though, like, you have other alternatives that you could potentially summon, Branded Fusion locks you into Fusion summoning. Sword Souls, their tokens, lock you into Synchro summoning. ABC doesn't have that restriction. You can link summon as much as you want, and we saw, like, going into Platinum Judge, going into IP Masquerena, potentially just being able to run through the Nightmares, try to get some bodies up, maybe go into Access Code Talker if you need to try to get a push. I think it is within reason that you're able to get a certain distance, even through the Dimensional Barrier, but I don't think you're able to actually create a threat as an interruption without the Dimensional Barrier, outside of the Regulus and the Wandering Griffin Rider. But because he does have access to those as well, where he doesn't need to go into the extract, I think it's more reasonable than not for Barrier to, like, not be super impactful.
How do you feel about, like, the rank 4 exceed aspect of the deck, though?
I think the rank 4 exceeds are more toolboxy than anything else, but there could be some really interesting choices that you can use that, like, if your opponent doesn't know about them, can really catch them off guard.
Got it.
What did?
So it looks like Luke is going to proceed through his plays. He had that Fight for Patchwork followed by Brandon Fusion. That's going to be a good combo. Also got a Brandon Lost in between with Aluper, and then is going to get Mirror Jade onto the field.
Yeah, being able to grab that Mercurier as well, having that additional monster negate, being able to stop something along the lines of Regulus, stop something along the lines of Water Enchantress, because most likely this Mirror Jade will want to use its effect on the normal summon. I believe, like, the way you play this matchup is almost exactly the way you played against the Prank Kid matchup with this deck previously. which I would argue is a good matchup for the Despia deck if Despia does get to go first. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Matthew plays into this field, which I assume he's had to do multiple times this tournament. And he is undefeated, so he likely has a strategy in mind.
Yeah, there's no way he's just played against... There's no way he's 10-0 and hasn't just played against some of the best Despia branded boards and been able to break through them, right? So we'll have to see exactly. But maybe Luke has like a game plan that the other Despia branded decks haven't figured out yet. Sometimes that's what happens against these like newer strategies, right? Is that there is this way to beat them with, you know, the quote-unquote best decks. It's just no one has figured it out yet, right? You have 11 rounds to figure it out before you get into Top Cut, and then it hits you.
The Branded Banishment in the main deck is also very interesting. This is a card that allows you to fusion summon with your opponent's monsters. You know, obviously been very powerful. We talked about super polymerization earlier, being able to use multiple monsters on your opponent's field. This is also similar to super polymerization. Doesn't limit you to just one monster on their field. You can use as many. You just have to use the monster that you summon back off its own effect. You also don't have to fusion summon if you don't want to. You could just use it as a monster board, similar to cards like Ice Dragon's Prison previously. But more than likely, in this situation, you are trying to use it as an interruption to remove a monster from their side of the field. I imagine because he does have access to things such as Masquerade, that you can try to force your way by using their lights, but I do believe it has to summon a level 8 or higher fusion monster from the graveyard, so it's going to be really difficult without an actual Despia monster.
Makes a lot of sense. So it looks like Matthew's going to start his hand with Terraforming, grab that Union Hanger, that crucial card that we keep talking about. Let's see if Luke has a response. Doesn't seem like he does. The Union Hanger is going to resolve, grab him, likely Buster Drake from his deck to his hand, depending on what other Union monsters he already has access to. But that's the big one, right? Because that's the one that lets you, like, surge, keep going.
Yeah, Buster Drake is definitely one of the best starters once you already have Union Hanger on the field. But it all is really critical on if the monster gets to stick on the field, right? Oh, it looks like he's going for the Sea Crush Wyvern here. Likely means that he does have additional pieces in hand, and potentially ways to extend here.
Wants to get them out of his hand, right? Basically, that's what the Sea Crush Wyvern will allow him to do.
Okay.
How will he tackle this Mirror Jade on the field, as well as the Mercurier in the hand?
Water enchantress.
Oh, that's a good way to start.
Okay.
The Mercurier forced that out. If there is a Rite of Aramis here still. Okay.
Not that bad, right? I think it's fair to use Mercurier there, though, right? Just getting Red Svarmus here into, like, the token, Draco back, Wandering Gift from Rider, that's a lot to get from just a single card, so I think it's really fair to answer that.
Yeah, I think that it does make a lot of sense here, especially since you're likely going to have to use the Mirror Jade on the token, otherwise the Draco back's just going to force it out. So you'd rather preserve that Mirror Jade effect. Going to discard the Assault Core, very interesting. Not an effect that's able to trigger, because it's not able to add back a copy of itself. It is able to add back additional copies of Assault Core, just not its own copy. Summons the Griffin Rider. Not forcing out anything from Luke just yet. And there is a C. Yeah, to the Union Hanger, chains the effect of Mirror Jade, making sure that Union Hanger is not able to equip the monster from deck if the original target is not on the field to be equipped to. Matthew giving a big exhale here, might not have the response required, or might have to use something along the lines of Forbidden Droplet here. There it is. Giving up the Griffin Rider from the field.
Interesting.
I'll check under the whip. I'll target ad lib to my Despia.
This is unfortunate. He could have attempted to play around that by giving up the Fateful Adventure as well, going after the Dragos Tapelia, making sure that you couldn't respond with a spell card. This could prove really detrimental to Matthew's strategy here if he's able to remove the C from the field.
Do you think it was because he was trying to prioritize, like, getting the Draco back, or why do you think he did that?
Yeah, maybe just getting the Draco back to the field, but I don't think he was able to get a token at this point of having the Enchantress already been used. Yeah. So I'm not entirely sure. Maybe he just assumed the red wasn't there because he went for the Branded Banishment instead, and he was ignoring red. He just assumed it's not there.
Got it. Well, it looks like that was enough for Matthew. Yep.
Yeah, acknowledging that it might have been a little greedy. Oh, well. That's a crazy thing to say. He's only lost 2 games this entire tournament. We just saw one of them.
That is wild. And seeing that he did have like some sort of on-field way to deal with it, I mean, this is what makes you a great duelist, though, right? Like, it's immediately identifying that, going back to 0-0 mindset, right? Like, it doesn't matter if I won or lost, I'm going to the next game like it's clean, and just taking that learning and moving on, right? He's probably only lost 1 game so far, and what he did to lose that game, he's probably never doing again, right? Just like we saw here.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to learn from all your games. You have to take it and with stride, and then move on to the next game with an open mind, and just try to play every game independently of each other.
Yep. That's definitely the competitive mindset necessary to take it all the way, like both these duels have so far, right? Basically, Matthew's guaranteed it. We likely as well, but the big thing is we just want to see like how powerful what this deck does, right? Because there's a chance Matthew can just make it all the way, right? Like, there's been a few players who've made it undefeated all the way to finals, undefeated all the way to a win, and those are definitely the craziest.
Yeah, that's a club I definitely want to join at some point. It's not something you can reasonably try to do. It is something that happens by pure chance at this point. But Matthew has that chance in front of him. He's able to walk away with this Game 3 win.
I'm excited to see exactly what side deck cards come out for Matt as well, because you assume this matchup has to be good, right? Otherwise he wouldn't be here, right? What do you think makes this matchup inherently maybe good or positive for, or what would, if you think it is, for the Adventure ABC-Therion deck?
I imagine it's just because it hard counters the cards that most people are playing for the meta right now. Having the Adventure Engine makes it so it's less likely that you're hard losing to those suppressive trap cards, such as well, not necessarily Anti-Spell, but the other ones, such as Rivalry Award, which you can kind of get around it by just being able to get the Draco back on the field and just get over it that way. There can be only one similar route there. It's more so just being able to be resilient into trap cards by having additional win conditions. And then, if most people aren't playing those points of interaction from the hand, then you're able to resolve your effects a lot more often. And I think a lot of people are leaning more toward the Lightning Stones of the format, the Mystic Minds, and he just has a lot more coverage for that, especially having Red Rimster. Mystic Mind is definitely the one that Red Rimster covers.
Got it. Well, I'm excited to see how this plays out. Plenty of time left in around 27 minutes. These duels have been blazing fast, basically one on the second turn each time. So we'll see exactly who comes out on top in this final duel. Duels have shuffled up. They're just about ready, looking at their hands. And it looks like Matt is going to start things off in Game 3 of our final round of Swiss at YCS Hartford. Starts Union Hanger into B-Buster Drake. This is the ideal opening that you'd want. Union Hanger does it all by itself. He's going to go ahead and likely equip that Union Driver to it so he can cheat out his next letter monster, and let's see which one he will grab.
Yeah, one of the main complaints that people have about the ABC-Therion deck is sometimes when you don't see Union Hanger, it's a little difficult to get started. But if you see Union Hanger, this deck just does so much.
I mean, when you're looking at Matt's deck, too, 40 cards, right? A lot of these decks go to like 45, 47, 52. Name a number between 44 and 60, we've probably seen it this weekend, right? But the fact that he's at a clean 40 with cards like, Terraforming, he also has Set Rotation and Triple Pot of Prosperity, he's going to see it often, right?
Yeah, he definitely understands that Union Hanger is the heart and soul of the strategy, and he is focused on finding it.
Yeah, the interesting card that I don't think we see too often right now is Ghost Order and Snow Rabbit, one of the hand effects that's fallen out of popularity, incredibly strong against Union Hanger.
Right. Doesn't remove the effect to add the monster from hand, but it does get rid of the effect to equip, which is arguably the more important one in this situation.
Yes. Oh, and he replaces it with the other field spell, so he has both engines online, getting access to King Regulus.
Yeah, so he's going to be able to have at least an additional interruption here. So that was another concern with the ABC-Therion deck. If you don't see access to Regulus, if you don't see access to the Adventure Engine, you don't actually have any hard negates, right? You have a lot of on-field interaction. You have the ABC Buster Dragon, you have potentially the IP Masquerader or whatever other Link monster you choose to go for, but no real hard interruptions. having that additional Regulus on the field makes you a lot more resistant to those board breakers as well. And we've seen those gaining a lot of popularity because similar decks like the branded Despia deck do not have those types of negates as well. But having that Regulus gives you a lot of safety. Well, it is turned off, though, by his own Baguska.
King is terribly tired. That's what happened to him. Yeah, interesting start. So maybe it's because he didn't get access to the adventurer cards, or maybe his hand was weak as to why he was forced to go to this line?
Yeah, well, I think it's simply because Baguska is so exceptionally powerful against a deck like Branded Despia, where its extra deck is pretty much locked into all fusions, right? And the most typical way to get around Baguska is going into a Link Summon. And it's almost certain that Branded Despia will not have one available. So he can activate the Branded Despia now, being able to put the cards in the graveyard, get some floating effects, but nothing will be able to interact with that Baguska, because all his monsters will be going to defense position, their effects will not be able to activate.
That's a good point.
Going ahead, send Fallen Albaz and a Dark Monster. You're going to be able to summon the Libellion.
Yeah, Albaz, Fallen Albaz and Chromatage, Despia. Yep. Summon Libellion, Searing Dragon. Yep. No effect, obviously. Yep.
Looks like Luke brought in Token Collector. Did you see that?
Yeah, it was a Token Collector and a red reboot, trying to really hard counter the dimensional barriers that everyone is hiding in. Very interesting choice, because a lot of these decks don't actually play very many trap cards, but that card is just so potent that you probably have to respect it enough to put that card in your deck. But Token Collector was trying to target down the Adventure Engine, and unfortunately, Matthew didn't have either of those, so those just sitting in Luke's hand right now. But 3,000 defense is a lot here for Libellion, going to be able to protect him for a little bit if Matt doesn't have anything to push him forward.
It looks like he has another copy of Union Hangers, so that's going to allow him to grab another one of these letter Union monsters.
Yeah, I guess at any point, if he wants to, he could just swing the Baguska into attack mode and start applying pressure by making his own Buster again.
That's fine.
Platinum Gadget also just being like so powerful in this deck, right? Basically, being able to special summon just a level 4 machine to one of those zones it points to.
Yeah, Platinum Gadget was the card that the deck was missing back in 2017, or sorry, 2016, where it was able to just do so much off one card. But giving you the ability of all the other gadgets to summon another machine from your hand is exactly what the deck was looking for.
I remember this deck. This was a deck that played Silver and Gold Gadget, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Photon Thrash, or even just any way to put 2 monsters on the field just so you can start putting the monsters in the graveyard.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely like a rank 4 deck at its core, and then Buster Jake just really like rounded everything out. Or sorry, Dragon Buster really rounded it all out.
How many field spells did Matthew open with? That was 2 Union Hangers and 2 Disc Coliseums.
How many hands are? 2.
Yeah. Luckily, they're replacing themselves, so it's not down in economy, but yeah, rough, right? Because he basically only gets like half of his hand live in the first turn.
But I will say, they are some of the better spells. I think as long as you see those 2 in your opening hand, you don't really care what the other 3 are. It's probably alright.
Yeah, you are not wrong. It looks like he might have even drawn a 3rd copy, though, of the Therion Disc Coliseum.
That just means another Regulus for next turn.
Yep.
Let's see what I got in here.
I'm going to go, before he commits the monsters to the graveyard, to see if he has a legal summon in his extra deck. Likely maybe going for something along the lines of Nightmare Unicorn to try to go after the Libellion. Of Phoenix trying to go after the sets first. Really playing it safe here.
I like it.
Nightmare Phoenix will be chain link 1. Carrying this.
I think he does get to get a lot of value here as well, assuming that like A gets to go back to hand maybe. Yeah. You know, we were talking about the value of these ABC pieces not being once per turn, going to be able to float into each other so often. They're like really solid when you're getting these discard effects off the Nightmares.
Yeah, incredibly so. So he's gonna get that. He's gonna blow away that red reboot.
That was attached to C, and so this was attached to the one that was there. So that would also have that trigger. Yeah. Is that okay? They're not once per turn.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so if that one was in fact equipped to one of the monsters linked away, it would also meet its trigger in that chain. I'm just going to go ahead and correct that really quick.
Yeah.
Yep, judges are just going to make sure that everything's in line.
Yeah, there's when you have so many monsters equipping to each other, sometimes it gets a little confusing as to which card goes where.
Getting like Insector flashbacks a little bit, like, oh, but yeah, definitely complicated, especially when you're like cycling and sending all of them through. Luke realizes though there's no malintent in it, right? Because it is a complicated game state. Like you have 6 monsters on the field, and you have some monsters that are also face up in your spell and trap card zone.
Yeah.
If
Get tough.
If anything, it was more of a disadvantage for Matthew to not get that effect. So I definitely do not think it was intentional.
Exactly.
Sorry.
When A's start getting to add A's, that's just kind of an infinite loop, if you will. A's continually be able to discard themselves and get another one.
Oh, that doesn't matter. So that's okay.
Yep, so only difference is he got to add back an A. That was it. We didn't progress far at all. It would have just been on the chain, similar to everything else. So he's going to go ahead and use his, looks like, Regulus alongside the Platinum Gadget to make another Link summon. Ooh, this time Nightmare Unicorn, which is co-linked. Very important here.
So effect Nightmare Unicorn.
This deck just is starting to feel like Goki from 2018. Just so many free cards, all that free value. Also, important to note, he managed to carefully use the Regulus that he summoned this turn. So the Regulus from the previous turn is still on the field, able to change its battle position still.
Yeah, incredibly intelligent play, right? Just making sure that...
I don't draw one off this time, right? Okay.
Let's see, yep. So just
Not bad.
checking to make sure whether or not he would draw a card, which he would not because the resolving spell cannot be spun back to the deck. So the Brandon in red is going to resolve.
When you summon a Masquerade.
Summon Masquerade, the Blazing Dragon.
Yeah.
Chilling 1, Despia, Tragedy, chilling 2, drawing search, Despia.
That's fine.
I'm going to be able to wall up even more here. Make sure Luke keeps himself alive. And get a couple of valuable effects along the way.
I believe with the Despia.
Okay.
I wonder how many different attributes do you think of his link monsters will be going into the graveyard if he decides to link those away into something along the lines of access code.
I'm good to continue.
This is a great question. This is a great question. I'm excited to see it, though.
Like, we have the Platinum Gadget, which is a light. We have Unicorn, which is a dark. We have Phoenix, which is a fire, able to potentially just burn through those 3 monsters on the field. Masquerade will be able to come back, though. So another wall that Matthew will have to overcome. But assuming everything can go into attack mode, there's easily an ABC Buster Dragon that can hit the field as well.
Access code talker.
That's true.
Targeting Nightmare Unicorn.
Yeah, you take 600.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I think Matthew is more than willing to pay the 600 for each of these activations.
Access code talker effect. Just for this, I'll take it. Yeah, it's such another. Access code talker effect.
Like, just hitting them one by one. And that was, in fact, 3 different attributes.
Yeah. Feels a lot like Dark Arm Dragon right now.
Yeah. Oh, access code is definitely the finisher that Dark Arm Dragon used to be. We're like, so this ABC deck is just really reminiscing all of the most powerful decks from history.
I mean, Goki was a good comparison, right? Like, it's somewhere between weirdly like Goki, Prank Kid, but he's just very, very fast.
That was the third.
Yep. So Luke just double checking to make sure, which was the case. We noted it earlier. And he's going to go ahead and banish A, B, and C as well to get out the ABC Dragon Buster.
And that is a lot of damage represented.
2100.
It's going to potentially use his Masquerade to try to block this damage, but the ABC Buster Dragon is able to use its effect, discarding a card to banish it.
Yeah, which makes that ad from A matter, right? Because he has 1 card left in hand.
Redeclare on it. Redeclare. Buster effect banish.
And that A will just be able to add another. And that is enough. Matthew takes it away, still undefeated in this tournament. Going to be the undefeated
Dropping one
Emphasis.
game. Dropping, or one
2
game.
games.
2 games the whole tournament. That's crazy so far. Wildly crazy. Super cool deck to see. I think adding the A a little inconsequential, right? Yeah, he was able to game that turn, but that was starting break still. Like, it is low on cards. Very, very low on cards.
You saw that he had many options. He opted not even go for the ABC plus dragon, which he definitely had the option. He left it in the back burner to have more potential on the following turn, but he understood how strong Baguska is in this matchup. If there's not an immediate answer, he will just get to do anything he wants to on the following turn.
Yeah, I think it's just identifying like certain ways to fight these decks on these axes that, I mean, you know, popular decks can't, right? The fact that it has such good access to rank 4s is incredible. We're going to cut to a quick commercial break, but we'll be back with our winner, our undefeated duelist from Swiss, Matt Van de Hugel. Stay tuned.